This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Okay. So today's topic is the Kaddish. Kaddish is something that even um, even Jews who might be somewhat nominally involved, yet when it comes to Kaddish, there they feel a strong connection, and that is something that many people are very, very moved by. Actually, on my trip, when I was in Florida for the conference, so I visited with my in-laws who were nearby, and they have an outdoor minyan there from Mariv in Deerfield Beach. And I davened Mariv there, and I bumped into a cousin of mine who I hadn't seen in a while. And he reminded me of the story that when he was saying Kaddish for his father, he was going to be traveling. And he was going to be, I believe, in Cincinnati. And he was looking to try to find a mincha minyan for himself in Cincinnati. And he was able, maybe wherever it was, I'm not sure. And he got in touch with a Chabad rabbi over there who said, yeah, don't worry, we'll take care of it for you. So a few days before he goes, he traveled, he called the rabbi back and said, yeah, well, what's your flight number and everything? I'll meet you there. So he's in the airport. And he's schmoozing with this big guy next to him with a bunch of tattoos and stuff like that. And then he sees these nine rabbi-looking people walking over to him. So he says to this fellow, "Excuse me, they're coming for me." And he says, "How do you know they're coming for me? For you?" And he said, "Well, I'm Jewish, and I'm saying a prayer for my late father called Kaddish, and they're coming to help me so that I can say that." All of a sudden, this guy's face got very serious, and he said, "My father died recently. I'm Jewish. I've never said a Kaddish. Can I say a Kaddish also?" And they made the minyan, and my cousin said Kaddish, Yis Gadal, and the person repeated Yis Gadal, and it was very, very moving for that person. And afterwards, my cousin thanked the rabbi for coming. Thank you for coming for me. I said, we didn't come for you. We came for him. In retrospect, we realized we hadn't come for you. We came for him. So Kaddish is something that really touches and moves people. It's fascinating that Kaddish does not say a word about death. It's the prayer that person says during the mourning period for someone who passed away, but there's not a single word there about death. It's all about Yitkadal v'Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. May God's name be made great and recognized in this world that he created according to his will. That's what the entire Kaddish is about, that we hope the world will recognize God and his greatness and all that he does for each and every one of us every moment. So what is the connection then? Why are we saying that after the death of someone? And we'll see more, but simply what a person is doing is putting aside their own pain and recognizing that we are here in God's world, opportunities for God's name to be made great, and we're putting aside our own pain and looking for the world to become a greater place, which it will be through the world acknowledging, accepting God. But it's fascinating that in the entire Gemara, there is no talking of, there's no mention of what we call Kaddish Yatom. Kaddish Yatom is the Kaddish that is said by the orphan or by the person who has lost their close relative. the Gemara does mention the power of Kaddish that is being said, but not in the context of it being said for mourning, a person mourning over the death of a loved one. The Gemara in Brachos does tell how one of the sages was traveling and came to a churba, a ruin, and went there to daven, went there to pray his regular davening, and he heard the voice of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence there. And he encountered Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, and Elijah the prophet said to him, Velozu bilvad. Not only now does the Shekhinah, does the divine presence mourn for its exile and the exile of its people, Ella, but rather Bishah Yisroel nichnasin lebate knesiot, when Israel enters into the houses of prayer, ulabate medrashot, and to the houses of study, va'onin, and they respond and they say the response that we say when either the chazan or a mourner is saying Kaddish, which is Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach, here Yehei Shmei Agadol Mevarach. We say Me'atav Olam, may his great name be blessed. Hakadosh Baruch Hu, God himself, so to speak, Menaneya Rosho, nods his head, so to speak. Va'omer, and says, Ashrei HaMelech, praised, fortunate is the king, Shemekalsin Oto Beveto, who gets praised while he is in his house. Kach malo la'av, but what is there for a father? Shehigle et banav, who had to banish his children, to exile his children. Va'oi lahem lebanim, and woe to the children, shegalu me'al shulchan avihem, who have been exiled, banished from the table of their father. So when we say Yehesh, when we respond Yehei Shmei Rabbah, and that is why that is one of the most, if not the most important part of the entire davening with a minyan, answering Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Leolam Lomeil Maya, may his name be blessed, Leolam, for eternity and for all eternity. That is the most important part of the davening. And if a person is in between two minyanim, and one of them is saying Kedusha, and the other one is saying Kaddish, one would answer the Kaddish. That is really the focal point of the entire davening. But once again, that is what is answered to the Kaddish that the Chazan says, that the mourners say. It is not mentioned, Kaddish in the Talmud is not mentioned in connection to a mourner saying that Kaddish. So where do we get it from? What is it built upon? And it's built upon an Or Zarua and the following story that he records, a bit of a troubling, frightening story. And it's also found, I believe, it says here, in Masechta Kala Rabati, not one of the regular tractates of the Talmud. And there, the following story is related. Rabbi Akiva, the great sage Rabbi Akiva, once saw a man covered head to toe with soot, carrying on his head the load, soot, dirt, not wearing a Pierre Cardin suit, but soot from a fireplace, S-O-O-T, carrying on his head the load that one would expect 10 men to carry, running like a horse. Akiva stopped the man and asked him, why are you working so hard? If you are a slave and your master works you this hard, I'll redeem you. If you are so poor you need to work this hard to support your family, I'll find you better employment. The man replied, please do not detain me, lest those appointed over me get angry at me. Rabbi Akiva asked him, who are you? What is your story? The man answered, I died. And every day they send me like this to chop and carry these amounts of wood. When I am finished, they burn me with the wood that I have gathered. Rabbi Akiva asked him, what was your profession when you were alive? He answered, I have been a tax collector, which is not simply working for the IRS, which in they meant someone who purchased from the government the contract to collect taxes. And I favored the rich by overtaxing the poor, which the Or Zarua calls killing the poor. Rabbi Akiva said, have you heard from your overseers whether there's any way to release you from your judgment? The man responded, please do not detain me, lest they become angry with me. I have heard there is no solution for me except for one thing that I cannot do. I was told that if I have a son who would lead the tzibur, the congregation, in the recital of Baruch Hu, right, what the chazan leads, or would recite Kaddish, so that the tzibur, the congregation, would respond, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mivarach, the Gemara we quoted above, they would immediately release me from this suffering. However, I did not leave any sons, but a pregnant wife. I have no idea if she gave birth to a male child, and if she did, whether anyone is concerned about teaching him, since I have not a friend left in the world. He was not the most popular person by the way that he carried out his profession. At that moment, Rabbi Akiva accepted upon himself to find whether a son existed, and if indeed he did, to teach him Torah until he could fulfill what was required to save his father. Rabbi Akiva asked the man for his name, his wife's name, and the name of the town where he lived. My name is also like yours, Akiva. My wife's name is Shoshniva, and I come from Lutkia. Rabbi Akiva traveled to Lutkia and asked people if they knew a former resident, Akiva, the husband of Shoshniva, to which he received the following answer: let the bones of that scoundrel be ground to pulp. He left a lot of friends. Rabbi Akiva asked about Shoshniva. He was answered, may any memory of her be erased from the world. Sounded like it was a good shidduch over there. He then inquired about their child and was answered, he is uncircumcised. We were not interested in involving ourselves even to provide him with a Brit Milah. Now, that is wrong. The halacha is, if the father doesn't do it, it becomes then the obligation of the congregation. It is their mitzvah to do, and not to say because the father was a scoundrel, and therefore we're not going to take care of this individual. But that was their response. Rabbi Akiva began his search for the son, whom he located. It turned out he was already a young adult. Rabbi Akiva performed a bris milah on him and attempted to teach him Torah, but was unable or unsuccessful in doing so. For 40 days, Rabbi Akiva fasted, praying that the child be able to study Torah, at which time a heavenly voice announced, Rabbi Akiva, now go and teach him Torah. Rabbi Akiva taught him Torah, Shema, Shmona Esrei, Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals, and brought him to shul in order for him to lead the tzibur, the congregation, by reciting Kaddish and Baruch Hu. To which the tzibur responded, Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach Liolam Ul'olnei Ol Maya, when he said the Kaddish, and when he led them in the Baruch Hu, they answered Baruch HaMevarach Liolam Va'ed. Okay, at that moment, Akiva, the husband of Shoshniva, was released from his punishment. This Akiva immediately came to Rabbi Akiva in a dream and told him, may it be Hashem's will that you eventually reach your eternal rest in Gan Eden, for you have saved me from Gehenna. That is the story, that is the teaching that we have, that connects Kaddish, Baruch Hu, and that's why a person who is in mourning or in a yard site will lead the services, so he can lead in the Baruch Hu, which is where he calls out Baruch Hu et Hashem Varach, blessed Hashem who is blessed, and when everyone answers Baruch Hashem Varach, Li'olam Va'ed, may God be blessed for all eternity. And of course, as a chazan, so there are many Kaddishes that only the chazan says, that only the leader says. From that, we have the situation that people say Kaddish after the death of a parent. They'll say that for 11 months. And after, for a parent, a person mourns a full year. And for any of the other relatives for which we mourn, have Avelis go into mourning, then it is only a 30-day mourning period, not a 1-year mourning period. Right? There are 7 close relatives for which we become full-scale Avelim, mourners. And that is 2 up a generation, parent, mother, father, 2 down a generation, son, daughter, 3 parallel generation, brother, sister, spouse.
And grandparents?
Grandparents, not. Grandparents, not. We do not become an Avel, a mourner for that. A person can go through their own personal mourning that they go through, but in terms of the laws of Avelut, of mourning, and the structure of Avelut, it's only for those 7. And we'll soon see that are you truly obligated or not has, at least in the Ashkenazic world, many parts of the Ashkenazic world, has a very, very, it makes a very big difference. Yes, Allah.
Okay, I understand saying Kaddish calms them down, helps them go through the grieving process. What effect does it have for those who were deceased? Is it? I'm serious.
Okay. So that's a very good question, right? Is Kaddish said for us? The Gemara discusses, is a hesped, is a eulogy, is that for the sake of the mourners, or is that for the sake of the deceased? Okay, so Allah is asking in a similar vein, is the Kaddish for the mourners, or is the Kaddish for the deceased? Right? So I would say the Kaddish is for the deceased. Along with that, the mourners often get a certain degree of comfort from it. But the comfort that they're getting, I believe, is for the most part the fact that they feel they're doing something on behalf of the deceased. And we saw clearly in the story of Rabbi Akiva that it was for the deceased, that it made a difference for this Akiva, the husband of Shoshniva, right? It made a tremendous difference for him. Why is that? So our understanding in general is that if a person leaves merit in this world, then that will continue to bring this person to a higher level of spirituality. Meaning, when we're here in this world where everything is hidden from us, God is hidden, spirituality is hidden from us, here we make choices and we can make positive spiritual steps, choices, and thereby we can elevate ourselves. Once we leave this physical, material world and we enter the spiritual realm, there everything is perfectly clear to us. There's no longer any challenge, any free will decisions. It's all right there in front of us. But if we left a foothold, I'll tell you why I use that term specifically, a foothold. If we still have some connection to this world, then we can continue to develop, to go further and further, to ascend. That could be through children who are doing positive acts, certainly saying the Kaddish on our behalf. But everything that the children are doing, that could be done through if we have supported an institution, and that's continuing thanks to our support, that is continuing to do their good, holy, spiritual work. Either way, what's happening, students, people we have influenced, if they're continuing to do good things because of us, then we continue to develop and to ascend in the next world. The reason I use that term of foothold is because we have the whole concept of yibum. Yibum is if a man dies, leaving a wife and no children, then that wife is connected halachically to a paternal brother that he might have. And that nowadays, we don't do the yibum part, we do the chalitza part. I'll explain what that means. Either the brother will marry her, and the child born from that will be considered the spiritual progeny, continuity of that late brother. If they're not going to get married, and nowadays they don't get married in such a case, but before she can get married to someone else, they go through a process called chalitza, and chalitza is that he removes the shoe and she spits, not on him, not at him, but she spits. What is this strange ceremony? So removing the shoe is considered, the body is considered the shoe of the soul. And when a person is here in this world, then this person who died, if he had children, they would be his continuity. Him taking off that shoe is saying that I'm causing a breach, a separation. There is no continuity that my late brother will have and can have in this world. And when we see something that is very, very selfish, that is disgusting, what do? We spit. Okay, so this is a person here, a family here, a son here, students here, people that we influenced, institutions that we supported. Those are our footholds, and it enables that person to go up to higher levels. So I always tell families, anything that you do, right? On the yard site, we make a Kaddish. Why? We want people to be making brachos, added blessings, because in the merit of that person. Everything that we do that's positive here serves Le'iloi Nishama. Yes, Your Honor.
What if the brother is already married?
Okay, if the brother is already married, that would not prevent him at a time where polygamy was halachically allowed. Where the brother was already married, that would not prevent him from doing yibum. Nowadays, even if the brother is not married, we don't do yibum, we only do chalitza. The reason for that is that yibum, it's only normally a brother, a sister-in-law, a brother's wife is absolutely prohibited. It's like one of those incest relationships, right? If the brother died leaving children, then the wife can never marry any of his brothers. That would be considered erva, right? An incestuous relationship. It's only when there are no children that then becomes a mitzvah. But it's only a mitzvah if one is doing it just for the sake of the mitzvah. In our world today, we can't get married to someone unless we're really fond of that person. We love that person. We're convinced that we will love that person. Otherwise, we'd say, maybe, someone comes to me, Rabbi, I really don't like her. I find her repulsive, but it's a mitzvah to get married, right? I'm going to say, maybe she's, yes, it's supposed to get married. I don't think she's the one for you, right? Right? So unless we are attracted, we would say, don't get married. In this case, if they are attracted, it's a problem. If they're not attracted, it's a problem. So therefore, we just do chalitza nowadays. Yes, David.
What about the Kaddishes that I understand, they're also known as separations in the davening, the ones that
Correct.
why is
Good.
it the same words? Where's the connection?
Good.
That the leader
So again, so David asked that we have the mourners Kaddishes, as they're called, that are at the end of davening. There's also the Kaddishes that are part and parcel of the davening itself, right? And they are there mostly to separate different sections of the davening. But again, keeping in mind that it doesn't mention anything about death. It's all about, right? And our davening is meant to Yitkadal Yikadash Shemei Rabbah, right? So therefore, it makes sense that we say Kaddishes, whether it's a half Chatzi Kaddish or the full Kaddish, at different junctures in our davening, right? Actually, well, those Kaddishes that were added on, that we call the mourners Kaddish, that's often we had an orphan, a child, a minor, who is in mourning. Right? We have a minor who is saying Kaddish for a father or for a mother. And that person is unable to lead the davening because he's a minor, right? And leading the davening means that person, we are fulfilling parts of our prayer through that person. If that person is not obligated, as in the case of a minor, then we can fulfill our kaddishes, our communal prayer obligation through that person. And therefore they added on these mourners kaddishes at the end of davening, which are not part and parcel of the davening, which does not need someone who's bar mitzvah to be doing it, in order that those who are saying kaddish younger than age 13 will be able to actually say a kaddish.
So you could say it without a minion or with a minion?
They could say it with a minion, but they are not counting towards the minion, but they need to say it with a minion.
Like for a parent or
Exactly. There you could have even non bar mitzvah people saying it, even on their own, even without other people saying it along with them.
So they were added later.
Those were added on later. We'll see about that in just a moment.
Rabbi,
Yes.
there's also when the person dies, the soul separates from the body. It's a very stressful event for the soul, and Kaddish is said sort of to comfort that soul in the transition from the.
Yes. The Kaddish certainly serves as an elevation for the soul, and thereby giving that strength and that comfort, right, to that soul. Yes, that is certainly the case. Now, if you look on the second, what I highlighted at the bottom of the first page is just that. So the main mitzvah is to say Kaddish for a father or a mother. Now, if parents are alive, if one parent is alive, then one would need to get permission from the other one to say Kaddish for the one that passed away. Okay? Because in a way, it's almost a disrespect to the parent that's alive that the child is saying Kaddish. I don't know of any situation where permission was not granted. Okay, but coming up to what David brought, if you look on the stage on the Maral Chadashon number 28, what I highlighted there. HaKaddish hazeh nitkan Achar psuke d'amrulazam rechanina va'achar shir amalos v'chein achar hadrashot. Right? These Kaddishes, we're talking about the mourners' Kaddishes.
It's the potato.
It's the same. The same way you have over there, Erica. It's the same.
It's the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
What is it?
It's a shepherd's pie. It's called. It's potato and a mock meat underneath.
Oh, really?
A shepherd's pie. Yeah.
I never had that. I had shepherd's pie, but it doesn't taste like that.
She has over here, but I think she didn't want.
It doesn't taste like that.
Uh-huh.
Maybe because the plant-based meat is
it's mock meat. So the Kaddishes that were established after Shir Hamalot and after Drasha, we say Kaddish to Rabbanan, Vayetomim she'omeroto, and the orphans, talking about young ones, minors that say it, Levi she'ein yichon lomar baruchu. They can't be the chazan. They can't say the baruchu. Elim kein nasu begadol, unless they're already adults. If I'm not obligated, I can't. Through me, others can't fulfill their obligation. V'kulu kaddishi da'almo takanta rabbananinu, and all of those kaddishes that are part of davening were established by the sages. And therefore, that's an obligation. You need someone who's an adult, not a minor, to say it. Aval kaddish zeh lav davar shebechovihi. But this kaddish is not; those kaddish are not obligatory. Hilkach, therefore, yicholim ketanim laomran, and therefore minors are able to say it. Dafil agedolim kapti tvei kaddish yosem mishar kaddishim ubarchu. But what's happened in our world now? People would rather say the mourners' Kaddishes than the Kaddishes that are part of the regular davening and the Baruchu. Which the Kaddish Zehavi Tosef Velochova, thinking, oh, this is the mourners' Kaddish. I want to say this one. And thinking it's better because this is not an obligatory, so it's better. The Savri, and they think the Avdi Tfei Kod Ruach Lahorehem, they think that causes a greater comfort to their late parents than the other ones. And Maral says, "Ve'ein dati maskemeti mahen bezeh." But I disagree. The Adrab, on the contrary, Gadol mitzuvah va'osa mishein mitzuvah va'osa. It's greater if one is obligated in doing something and one does it than if one is not obligated and one does it. Right? We often think, if I'm not obligated, I do it. Hey, that's great. That's showing just how. No, but when I'm obligated, it's easy to do when you're not obligated to do it. I always think of, as a teenager, I'll take out the garbage. My parents say, take out the garbage. Later, soon, right? Once you have to do something, your sense is, I don't want to do it, right? So it's greater when we're obligated than we're not obligated. Fascinating. Maftir can also be given to a katan, to a minor. We typically don't do that, but it could be given to a minor. And then he would say, if you have a minor who's saying Kaddishes, let him get maftir, because that will give him the opportunity to say Baruch Hu. Because when you get an aliyah to the Torah, you say Baruch Hu. Maftir is not one of the 7 main aliyot, and therefore even a minor could get the maftir, and that way he could also lead in Baruch Hu. Now, there are different customs that come up in terms of saying the Kaddishes. Here, everyone says Kaddish. Many people say the Kaddish, and I push that everyone says it in unison. Right? That's why this year I am saying Kaddish. I'm saying Kaddishes for all those that were killed October 7th. But even when I'm not saying a Kaddish, if I see that it's going off in different directions, I'll say Kaddish. I'll say it kind of loudly to try to pull everyone together. And we'll soon see why. Yes, Steve?
I davened at Breuer's in Washington Heights for a while, and the German custom is that only one person says Kaddish.
Exactly. We'll see that right. Okay. Right? We're going to come to that soon. The German custom is only one person says Kaddish. It appears, and this is, it appears that initially whoever wanted to recite what we today call the Mourner's Kaddish would do so. Knowing the story of Rabbi Akiva, it became an element of competition. Different people trying to grab the mitzvah, which sometimes engendered machlokes, dispute, and chilul Hashem, and desecration of God's name. If people are fighting over it, that's not how it's meant to be. To resolve this problem, two approaches developed for dealing with the issue. Among Sfardim, the accepted approach was that anyone who wanted to say Kaddish did so, and everyone recited Kaddish in unison. This practice is noted and praised by Yaakov Emden. Among the Ashkenazim, the approach used was to establish rules of prioritization. Who goes first, right? A parent, right? Are you within the Shiva, within the Shloshim, within the year? Is it for a sibling? Is it for a spouse? Right? All these different orders of priority, whereby one person at a time recited Kaddish. Now, according to that, if there are not that many people saying Kaddish, then the Gabbai can give out. You'll say this one, you'll say this one, you'll say this one. If there are more people saying Kaddish than the number of Kaddishes, then you have some very disgruntled members, attendees, whatever it is. A person came, they wanted to say Kaddish, and they were unable to say Kaddish. By the late 18th, early 19th century, several major Ashkenazi authorities, among them the Chai Adam, Chasam Sofer, discuss a practice where Kaddish was recited by more than one person simultaneously. Okay, that even amongst Ashkenazic communities. About this time, we find another custom in some communities in which the mourner's Kaddish was said by only one person, and that would need to be distributed, pointed out, but where everyone who chose could join in the recital of the Kaddish de Rabbanan. There's another Kaddish after we learn a little bit after davening, we say the Rabbi's Kaddish is called, and that everyone could join in. That was recited at the end of the daily morning prayer, presumably after the Rav taught a shir in halacha. So that's how they try to sort of keep everyone happy. Keep the minhag, that one person says the mourner's Kaddish, but not incite the masses, and have at least one Kaddish that everyone would be able to say. With this background, we can understand the following mid-19th century responsum. A community had two shuls and several shtibelach. What's a shtibel? A little minyan. That's in this one's backyard during COVID, this one's basement. Those are shtibels in someone's house. They haven't put a little minyan together. The main shul was in serious disrepair. They made an agreement to close all the smaller shuls in order to pool resources and invest in one large, beautiful new shul and have no other minyanim. Included in this decision was a new takana, a new ruling that they established, that all mourners would now recite all the Kaddishes in unison. Some individuals claim, no. Can you believe that? That everyone agreed? That the community should follow the practice of the Ramah and the Magen of Ram and prioritizing the recital of Kaddish, and one person gets to say it at a time. The community leaders retorted that this would create machlokas, dispute, since there's only one shul, and many people like to say more Kaddishim than they can under the proposed system. The community sent the Shaila to Rav Ber Oppenheim, the Rav and Av Bezdin of Ebenschutz. He felt that the practice of having all the mourners like Kaddish together should be followed, but first wrote an extensive letter clarifying his position, which he sent to Rav Yaakov Ettlinger, the Aruch HaNer, who contended that one should not change the established minhag of Germany, as you pointed out, from Washington Heights, Steve, and Poland, a minhag of more than 300 years, and that the minhag was only one person recites Kaddish at a time. Furthermore, the Aruch HaNer contends that one cannot compare Ashkenazic to Sephardic observance for a practical reason. The Sfarim are accustomed to praying in unison, right? Every few weeks I daven Shachar Shabbos morning by the Sfardim, and there everything is said out loud, word by word. They go around, and this I'll lead a paragraph, another person lead a paragraph, another person lead a paragraph, and everyone else says it quietly along with that person. So they're used to all praying in unison. And therefore, when they say Kaddish, everyone exhibits great care to synchronize its recital. When Ashkenazim attempt to recite Kaddish in unison, right, here we do. I call it herding the cats sometimes. Not hurting, H-U-R-T, H-E-R-D, trying to get everyone together, right? When Ashkenazim attempt to recite Kaddish in unison, no one hears the Kaddeshim. The result is a cacophony where no one hears or responds appropriately to Kaddish. But I would say, David, when we say Kaddish, we're all saying it together.
Pretty much,
Yeah, we're all saying in unison. Yeah, there are a couple of maybe a few words faster, slower.
Maybe
But
it's a smaller congregation.
yeah, that's true also. That's true also.
When I lived in LA, some of the boys, they don't care if there's anybody else in the room. They're going at high speed.
Yeah.
Some people can't keep up with them, and it's a terrible thing.
Yeah. Well, that's why I feel as the rabbi that when I see that happening, that it's my responsibility to say it loud, and at a pace that I think most people can do it. Right?
If you were making the prayers, like the Mourner's Kaddish, whenever this Kaddish was written, and you were then adding a couple for mourners, why wouldn't you, in theory, put in something like, and we wish him or her well, or we wish, there's like point of reference. I still think of who passed. Maybe it's the same impact, but I'm just thinking I didn't write it. But if I were to write it, I'd throw something in.
I think the focus is meant to be that it's a merit.
Yeah.
It's meant to be, as Allah said, it's a merit for the person who passed away.
Yeah.
And the merit is that they left a son who's willing to push aside their own personal pain and look for God's glory. And that is the zechut. But there is one word in there that I think does or can relate to the mourner. And we say le'ela above mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata, above all praises and above all comfort. So the nechama is what we do the nichum avelim, right? So that the mourner recognizes that the ultimate nechama, right, is hamakom yinachem eschem, that Hashem gives us that ultimate comfort. So that's the one word I think that does make it in there. And just going back to trying to say it in unison, when we have someone, I mentioned earlier that Kaddish, we have people who sometimes will come who can't read a word of Hebrew or anything, and so we have it transliterated in the back of our Sidurim. So when someone like that comes to shul, I'll try to go over and stand with that person and say it along with that person, and that way bring everyone to that pace, which is, obviously more difficult for that person. Actually, what I found helpful for me is when I'm doing that, I do it from the English transliteration, because that gives me an appreciation of just how difficult and what tongue twisters they are, especially when you don't know what it means and you're reading from the English. So that allows me to appreciate more what this person is struggling with, and makes it easier for me to go at what might be considered a painful pace for some who are listening, but that's the only way that person is able to actually do it.
Just what about the variation of there's a derabanan, there's a chatzi, where's the nuances? How is that all about?
Okay. Yes. So there are different. Yes. There are different kaddishes that we have. There is a number of what's called a chatzi kaddish, a half kaddish. That is said when we're in between sections of davening. There's the Kaddish Titkabel, which includes the line Titkabel Tzloton Hashem, accept our prayers. That is said every time that we have a Shmona Esrei. That is said after that Shmona Esrei. Okay? So when we have Musaf, two Shmona Esreis, we'll say two Kaddish Tiskabels. Right? You'll see when it says Hallel there, say after Hallel, if we're not davening Musaf, you say a half Kaddish. If we're davening Musaf, then after Hallel, you say a full Kaddish, because we'll say another full Kaddish after Musaf. So we have the half Kaddish, we have the Kaddish Titkabel after Shmona Esrei, we have the Mourner's Kaddish, which includes the Yehei Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya, Oseh Shalom Bin Ramav, right? And then we have the Kaddish de Rabbanan, the Rabbi's Kaddish, which also puts in a plug for all those who are studying Torah in this place and all places, right? So those are, and that's what is said after studying Torah. That's why we say it after Rabbi Yisroel in the morning, Rabbi Yisroel Omer, because that's really learning. That's saying over a Breita.
What
So
is
that
it when you say Rabbi Shmuel? What is,
when
what
we
does that
start,
mean? No,
Rabbi Yishmael said there are 13 ways through which the Torah is derived. And then after that, we say a Kaddish Rabbanan because that's learning.
That's the tongue twister one.
Yeah, that's a tongue twister.
Yeah.
And also after the Ein Kelokeinu, we have different paragraphs of learning there. Pita Makatoret on Shabbos morning, that's why we say Kaddish Rabbanan after that also. And when we learn, so then we say Kaddish Rabbanan after that also. Yes.
Isn't the Tikabel also known as full Kaddish?
Yeah. It could also be called a full Kaddish. Yeah. You know, the Chatzi Kaddish, you see, the Mourner's Kaddish is sort of in between the length of the half Kaddish and the Kaddish Tiskabel. That's why the full Kaddish could be a little confusing. We're talking about which one we're talking about. But it often is called the full Kaddish.
And then there was a Siddur where I saw it was for a house of mourning, but it wasn't the typical. I mean, isn't there one where there's a variation of?
Yes. So there are those who have the custom not to say Kaddish Tiskabel in the house of mourning, right? So if you have a siddur for the house of mourning, then it will probably have that in parentheses with some say and some don't say. Dr. Ray.
No, I was just curious why the Kaddish is in Aramaic.
Yeah. It's in Aramaic. Yeah. That is interesting. And it actually, you know, we used to joke, my kids in Israel, they spoke Hebrewish, right? You know, with American parents living in Israel, they spoke a mixture of Hebrew and English. Well, Kaddish actually is a bit of a combination of Hebrew and Aramaic, right? Oseh Shalom bin Ramav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, that's pure Hebrew. Yitkadav Yikadav Shemei Rabba Bi'alma Divrach Yirutei is Aramaic. It really is a mix of both. And I think when it was instituted, that was the language that the common man spoke. And that's what made it intelligible, understandable.
So
Yeah.
Israelis spoke Aramaic,
In Babylon, in ancient Babylon, that's why the Talmud is in Aramaic. The Mishnah, which is an earlier stage, is in Hebrew, but the Talmud is in Aramaic. Yeah, that was the language, which is very similar to Hebrew in many ways, but not completely.
So did that start with the Rambam's father?
Earlier than that.
That's like
Yeah.
the 1100s.
Yeah, earlier. This is going back already to the Anshe Knesset Agadola. This is going back already to Mordechai of Purim fame time.
Can
Yeah.
we move this?
Sure.
Can we move this? How do we move this back?
The chair back?
Yeah,
Sure.
Oh, I think it's blocked out.
locked. You're locked. Thank you.
You want to Just a little more room.
Okay, this is fine.
That's good. Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
How long before the Gemara did the Mishnah?
I can hear you.
About the Mishnah was about the year minus 100 to the year around 200, and the Gemara from the year 200 to the year 500. The Mishnah was compiled by Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, but the Mishnah was teachings that had been passed down for generations. Moshe, if you take a look at the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, it lets you know where the Mishnah came from. Moshe kibul Torah Sinai and gave it to Yeshua. Yeshua the Zakein, and Zakein Anshe Knesset Hagadola, right? That's how it went down to the Nevi'im, and then Anshe Knesset Hagadola. That was in Hebrew. Yeah.
And the Gemara debates the Mishnah.
The Gemara is like an unzip file on the Mishnah. I call the Mishnah like a zip file, and the Mishnah is an unzip file on that. Yeah.
Because it signals a period of learning. That's why, like, when you or David finished those track dates, then at the very end we said Kaddish.
Yeah. And that's another
That's
Kaddish.
kind of puzzling,
Yeah.
but it's learning.
Actually, there are two other Kaddishes that we're already on that. There's the burial Kaddish, which speaks about the rebuilding of Jerusalem. And there is the at the end of a tractate, a Siyum Kaddish, which includes both the burial Kaddish part and also the Kaddish D'Rabbanan part. So that is the longest Kaddish that we have after a Siyum of a Masechet. So therefore over here, so there was a bit of an issue, right? So the Rav Ber Oppenheim felt that they should all be saying it together. The Aruch LaNer disagreed, right? Okay, so therefore that's how we have the different customs today. And what I do here is the standard, besides the Yeka, besides the German custom, amongst general Ashkenaz. You go to Ashkenazic shul, unless it is called the Yeki minyan, German minyan. Many people say Kaddish, but in order to take care or to address this issue, so then we try our best to try have everyone saying it together. The Maharal of Prague, the very last paragraph, had a brother, Rav Chaim, who authored a work entitled Sefer HaChaim, in which he writes that most people die because at some point in their life they made a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name. The reason a mourner recites Kaddish is to use the parent's death as a reason to create Kiddush Hashem by reciting Kaddish, Yitkadal v'Yitkadash, Kiddush, all the same word, thus atoning for the original Chilul Hashem. May we all merit to create Kiddush Hashem in our lives. Right? So really the main idea of the Kaddish is creating a Kiddush Hashem, a sanctification of God's name, and that is what causes an elevation for the soul. And that's why I said before, really everything that a person does, all good things that a person does, serves to elevate those people that because of them, we are here, right? So they have a stake in all that which we do.
No, that last part, though, doesn't sit so good. Because, like, they made a Chilul Hashem, therefore they died. I prefer to think they fulfilled their work on this planet, and therefore...
Yes. I don't think it's mutually exclusive, right?
Like, everybody's going to sin at some point in their life.
Everyone at some point... right, creates a Chilul Hashem, and there are certain things, the Rambam writes for different Aveirot, what is the atonement, right? For certain things, forgiveness. For other things, Yom Kippur, right? Chilul Hashem only gets fully atoned upon death. Okay? Yeah, right? So therefore, everyone dies at some point because they need that atonement. At what point will that death be? When they have finished what they need to accomplish here. But that death will serve as the final atonement that they need for that. And therefore, we want to make sure that their death is leading to a Kiddush Hashem. All right? Okay. Yes, Dov.
We get one more, can we say Kaddish? Rabbanon.
Yes, Jan.
Could next week you make like a table with the various cottages and the conditions that invoke or